The winter night was cruel, biting through the layers of clothing David wore as he stepped out of his office building. Snowflakes fell in slow, lazy spirals, dusting the deserted streets of the city in white. Most people had long retreated indoors, but the cold didn't stop the shadows from moving, shadows of those less fortunate, those forgotten. David had always been aware of the city's harshness, but tonight, something made him slow down. A soft, quivering voice reached him over the whistling wind. "Please, help her, Daddy." He froze, scanning the dim alley ahead. At first, he thought it was a trick of the wind, a fragment of sound lost in the night. Then he saw her, a girl huddled against a brick wall, trembling violently, wrapped in a tattered blanket that offered almost no warmth. Her hair was damp, sticking to her pale, tear-streaked face, and her wide, terrified eyes locked onto his. David's chest tightened. There was something familiar about her fear, a raw vulnerability that pricked at a place in him he thought he'd closed off long ago. Without thinking, he removed his thick overcoat and stepped forward, extending it toward her. "You're safe now," he said softly, kneeling beside her. The girl flinched at first but then let him wrap the coat around her small frame. Her teeth chattered violently, and her hands shook as they clutched the fabric. "Come with me," David said gently. He guided her to his car, shielding her from the biting wind. She didn't speak, only buried her face in his coat, whispering the word, "cold," over and over. He didn't push, didn't ask questions, he just focused on getting her somewhere warm. The ride to his penthouse was silent except for the hum of the heater and the occasional sniffle. When they arrived, he led her inside, offering her a hot cup of chocolate and a soft blanket. Her hands hesitated, then reached out, gripping the cup as if it were a lifeline. "My name's David," he said, keeping his voice calm, soothing. "What's your name?" "Lila," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The story that spilled from her over the next hour was fragmented and heartbreaking. Abusive foster homes, nights spent in alleys, hunger gnawing at her, fear her constant companion. David listened, letting her words sink in without interruption. Each detail cut him deeper than the last. He realized that saving her tonight wasn't enough. He had to give her a life, not just warmth. And for the first time in years, he made a silent promise: he wouldn't let her down. The first few days after Lila arrived at David's penthouse were quiet, almost painfully so. She moved cautiously, eyes constantly scanning every corner as if expecting danger to emerge from the shadows. The warmth of the apartment, the soft hum of the heater, even the gentle flicker of the lamps, all of it was foreign to her. David didn't push her. He gave her space, leaving little touches of normalcy around the apartment. A neatly folded blanket on the sofa, a cup of hot cocoa waiting on the table, a stack of books she might like. He watched her from a distance, allowing her to explore, to feel safe at her own pace. "Lila," he said one evening, sitting across from her at the small dining table. "You don't have to talk if you're not ready. But when you are, I'll listen. No judgments." Her eyes met his for a moment, wide and cautious, before flicking away. Silence hung in the air for a while, broken only by the soft clinking of her spoon in the cocoa mug. Then, slowly, she whispered fragments of her past: nights spent shivering on cold streets, food stolen just to survive, foster homes that felt more like prisons. David listened, nodding, sometimes offering a comforting word, sometimes simply being there. He realized that trust couldn't be forced. It had to grow like a fragile seed, nurtured carefully over time. And so, he became patient, letting her small gestures guide him. A week later, he noticed her leaving a book open on the sofa. The next day, she lingered in the kitchen while he cooked dinner. Tiny signs, but monumental for a girl who had lived in fear. Slowly, she began to laugh at the movies he showed her, a light, tentative sound at first, but growing with each passing day. David also introduced her to the rhythm of normal life: hot showers, warm beds, school routines. He hired tutors to help her catch up academically, and on weekends, he took her to the park, to the library, to quiet corners of the city where children played without fear. Then came the day she first called him Daddy. It was almost accidental, muttered under her breath as he handed her a warm blanket. But David's heart leapt. He knelt down, smiling softly, and whispered, "That's perfect, Lila. You're safe with me." From that moment, their bond deepened. Lila's walls began to crumble, replaced with trust, laughter, and tiny acts of affection. For the first time in years, she believed in kindness, in safety, and in the love of someone who wouldn't ever let her go. Years passed like the turning of seasons, each one leaving its mark on both Lila and David. The timid, shivering girl from the alley had blossomed into a young woman with a quiet strength and a determined spirit. Her eyes, once wide with fear, now sparkled with ambition and hope. School had become a sanctuary. Lila excelled academically, surprising teachers with her intelligence and resilience. Tutoring sessions evolved into independent study, and soon she was helping classmates with subjects she once struggled to grasp. But her success wasn't measured merely in grades. It was in the way she carried herself, confident but humble, compassionate but unafraid to speak up. David watched from the sidelines, pride swelling in his chest. He had not only rescued her from the cold streets but had nurtured a spark that was now aflame. Still, he knew that independence didn't mean she didn't need guidance. Late nights were often spent talking about life, choices, and responsibilities. "You don't have to fix the world all at once, Lila," he reminded her one evening as they reviewed plans for her volunteer work at a local shelter. "Start with what you can handle, one step at a time." She nodded, eyes determined, yet soft. "I just want no one to feel the way I did," she said quietly. "I don't want anyone to think they're invisible." Her compassion extended beyond mere words. Lila volunteered every weekend at shelters, food kitchens, and community centers. She spoke to other children with patience and understanding, never patronizing them, always listening. She had become an advocate for the voiceless, driven by her own past and fueled by the stability David had provided. Even in her burgeoning independence, she included David in her world. He attended her school award ceremonies, helped organize charity drives, and sometimes accompanied her on weekends to the streets she once feared, quietly giving support without overshadowing her. Their relationship was no longer just rescue and care. It was partnership and mutual respect, a bond forged through years of love, trust, and shared history. David often caught himself marveling at the transformation. The girl who had once cried in his arms for warmth and safety now walked beside him, capable, courageous, and kind. He realized that rescuing her had not only given her a life but had reshaped his own. He was no longer a solitary CEO consumed by work, but a father, mentor, and witness to a remarkable journey of resilience. And though challenges remained, both understood one simple truth: whatever the future held, they had each other, unbreakable, a family by choice and heart. The gala hall shimmered with crystal chandeliers and the soft murmur of well-dressed guests, but Lila's eyes searched for only one person: David. Years had passed since that freezing night in the alley, but every achievement, every milestone she had reached, was tied to him. He had given her more than warmth. He had given her life. As the evening wound down, Lila finally found him near the terrace, overlooking the city lights. The wind tugged gently at her hair, carrying a faint scent of winter air. She approached quietly, her heart pounding. "Daddy," she said softly, almost afraid her voice might break the fragile moment. David turned, surprise and joy lighting his face. "Lila, you look incredible," he said warmly, pulling her into a brief, protective hug. She felt the familiar comfort of safety and love, a feeling she had once feared she would never know again. They walked together to a quieter corner, away from the chatter and music. Lila took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly as she held his. "I couldn't have done this without you," she whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. "Everything I've become, it's because of you. You saved me when no one else would. You didn't just rescue me, you gave me a life." David's chest tightened with emotion. He brushed a tear from her cheek, his voice steady but thick with feeling. "You saved me too, Lila," he replied. "You reminded me why I fight, why I care, why I love. Seeing you grow, seeing the person you've become, it's the greatest gift I could ever receive." For a long moment, they simply stood there, hands clasped, eyes locked, letting the weight of their shared journey settle between them. The city spread out beneath them like a sea of lights, and yet in that moment, it felt as if nothing existed beyond their bond. "I promise," Lila continued, voice soft but firm, "I'll always honor the life you gave me. I'll help others, like you helped me, so no one feels invisible." David smiled, a mixture of pride and relief washing over him. "And I'll always be here," he said. "Your anchor, your home, your family. No matter where life takes you, you'll never walk alone." They embraced again, not just as father and daughter, but as two souls intertwined by fate, love, and resilience. That night, the stars above seemed to shine a little brighter, as if the universe itself celebrated their journey, from cold streets and fear to warmth, hope, and unbreakable love. Lila knew, with every fiber of her being, that the life she now had was no accident. And David knew that rescuing her had given him a purpose deeper than any business triumph ever could. Together, they had built a life of second chances, and it was only just beginning.